10 actions you can take today to improve your health forever. I love these concepts and frameworks that really once you take the action right now, once you do the thing, you buy the tool or you invest in the framework, the path, it will have a forever effect on your health. And there are so many of these little things. And I've actually wanted to rewrite this article because there's a few things that I would add in here. So there might be like 10 to 12 action items here. But this article got a lot of great feedback. I had a lot of people DMing me, asking me for some more deeper recommendations on certain things that are included in here. So I hope you guys find this useful. Before we get into the podcast, I just want to give a quick shout out to Noble Origins. This is Brett and mine's supplement company. We've been working hard for 2 years on this brand, and we have put together what we think is the best protein product on the market. This product has beef protein isolate in it, collagen, colostrum, and an organ complex. It combines all the most nutrient-dense parts of the cow. And what we love about it most is the beef protein isolate product, which for us, it sits incredibly well in the gut. There's an amazing amino acid profile. It's about 20 to 25% glycine, which if you know anything about glycine, it's an incredible amino acid that helps with gut repair, recovery. There's so many incredible benefits of glycine, one of which we actually talked about this on our most recent podcast with Allie Miller. Glycine actually can help detox our body from glyphosate. So many great benefits from increasing and actually meeting your protein goals. We think that most people aren't hitting their protein goals. So just having a high quality form of supplemental protein is imperative. So from our standpoint, we think that we've created the best product we possibly could. And if you actually subscribe today, there's a 20% discount on all subscriptions. So the price of the product goes from $78 to $63, which is a great deal. So go check out our website, nobleorigins.com, and get yourself some today. We're going to have some new products coming here in the next few months, so stay tuned. All right, let's dive into this article. So I wrote this article, I said, back in August of 2022, but it has aged beautifully. Truly, I think that there's some aspects of this article that really speak to a lot of the evolution of what's happened in the health world, this conversation that's gotten more nuanced. More people are now caring about their health in different ways. And so the title of the article, again, is 10 actions you can take today to improve your health forever. And the first action that you can take today to improve your health forever is very simple. Buy a shower filter. Now, you're going to find that some of these things might feel a little anticlimactic. They might seem a little simple, but once we get into the details, you're going to realize kind of what I'm going for here when I wrote this article. And one of the main themes of this article is reducing stress. It's reducing the toxic load that you are being made susceptible to throughout your week. And one of the things that I don't think a lot of people appreciate is just how often your body is coming into contact with different chemicals and different things that's causing it to go in defense mode. That's why we see a large spike in autoimmune issues. That's why we see a large spike in people struggling with things like low energy, brain fog, fatigue. There's so many endocrine disruptors in our water, our food. And I think a lot of people are seeing, even in like the fertility crisis and just hormone disruptions, we're seeing a lot of stressors that are unintended. They're environmental stressors, environmental toxins. These things aren't meant to be there. And a lot of people go about their day. They get used to baseline. They get used to normal. And effectively, they get used to a lower state of living. And so when they go on vacation, when they go to a remote island on a camping vacation and they get away from all the toxins that they're typically exposed to in a city, they get away from the light pollution, they get away from the noise pollution, they get away from the air pollution, they get away from the water pollution, they get away from the EMF pollution, and they notice that their body starts to respond better. And they notice that their body's ability to handle and hold stress becomes that much better. And there's something powerful about the body system. It's we are electromagnetic beings. We are full of electrons, and our body's constantly looking for that homeostasis, just that neutral ground where it can not only thrive but defend off things that might cause it not to thrive. And so one of the things that I think is incredibly important is what can we do throughout our day and week that makes us healthier by default without having to think any extra, without having to have any level of discipline to get yourself healthier. You don't need to go to the gym. You don't need to, walk 10,000 steps in order to be healthier. Like getting a shower filter is something that you order it once, you apply it, you install it, and you're good. And so one of the reasons why the shower filter was my first one is because I don't think people realize how bad most water is. And one of the things about when you get in the shower, most people shower at a water temperature that creates water vapor. So if you're taking a hot shower, warm shower, creates that vapor. The vapor actually absorbs into the skin way faster. And it actually creates the chlorine, which is, most water treatment plants for most cities, most municipalities are using chlorine to disinfect and clean the water. Now, most people don't know that. It's in your drinking water. It's in your water that you use to shower. This is, by all standards, a measure that these cities are taking for sanitation, but I think there's a micro to, I would say on a scale of acute toxicity, I think this is one of those things that you're coming into contact with toxicity at a low rate every single day, which for me, I think that is something that should be very alarming for people, because if you're doing something every single day, like showering, and you're coming into contact with low levels of toxicity, like chlorine getting turned into chloroform, which chloroform is, again, like a cleaning agent. It's something that people use in hospitals to clean, and it's like puts people to sleep in hospitals. So yeah, it's very, very highly potent, and our bodies react to it in a very negative way when we're not intending to be consuming chloroform. So one of the things that I want to draw attention to here is if you're taking a 10-minute shower and it's on high and you're taking in some of those water vapors are going directly into your bloodstream. It's not passing your gut lining. It's not passing, if you drink tap water, it's going through your mouth, it's going through your gut lining. There's a chance that it's, getting somewhat filtered through that process of going through your stomach acid. With a shower filter, it's not going through that process. It's not going through the digestive process. It's going right into your body, into your bloodstream. And so there isn't as good of a filtering system at that point. And so I think it's really important to note that. And so the practical tip here is 100% just get the shower filter. They're usually pretty cheap. The one that I recommend comes from Organic Jaguar. He has, unfortunately, his product is so good that he's stocked out regularly, but his product is incredible. It's a high quality shower filter. It does the job. And what I love about non-toxic living is, that one setup, you set it up once and you're good to go. Organic Jaguars is great. He's friends with Santa Cruz Medicinal. Those guys do an amazing job just creating and educating people on content. And I love their shower filter, the shower filter that Organic Jaguar has. If it's in stock, it's an incredible one. There's a few other ones out there that I can link to in the show notes, but that's a great one. And highly encourage you guys to check that one out. And so, yeah, this is a simple win. Like, I don't know if you need to hear much more than that, like reducing your exposure to chlorine and other byproducts that are in water. Like chlorinated water can have incredibly negative effects. Like some of them include higher rates of bladder, kidney, and rectal cancer, THMs, which is what most municipal water is creating, in the form of something like chloroform. THMs is kind of what the chemicals are called. They can be linked to spontaneous abortion and other birth defects. So if you're someone who's thinking about having a kid, highly, highly, highly recommend getting a shower filter. This is a basic. I think this is a no-brainer. Money well spent. Even if there's 1% ROI, I think it's worth it. So that's one that I think is worth it right off the get-go. I had a bonus in here. This is one of the ones that I added since writing the article. I think an air filter is a close second in terms of just improving your toxic load at such an easy and effortless way. And so recently, a few months back, we had Mike Feldstein on the podcast. He's the founder of a company called Jasper, and they create these industrial grade air filters. Like we had him on the podcast, and he was in the podcast studio measuring the air quality, and he was amazed. He was like, man, the air is so still in here. There's a lot of, mycotoxins, mold in the air. There's different particles that are interacting with us right now that he was measuring, and they're having a negative effect. The CO2 is having a negative effect on our ability to continue the conversation in a way where we feel good. You know, if you're sitting in a space that's high in CO2, it really taxes your energy. And so one of the things he was saying was how much people come back to him and report to him once they tried this air filter. They report incredible sleep quality. And so he was saying that high CO2 results in impaired sleep, worse test scores, reduced brain cognition. So I really think, like, from just a simplicity standpoint, if you can get one or two of these tools that you know they're just kind of playing defense for you in your house, in the space where you're spending most of your time, like if you're sleeping 8 hours and maybe at home for another 3 hours, 4 hours throughout the day, you know, you're spending like about half your time in this one space. I think it's good, at the very least, to consider some of these measures that can help you play a little bit of defense from some of the stressors that might otherwise be in the space. So, air quality, incredibly important. The big things on that is, in my opinion, is really the CO2. I think that's what the Jasper does a good job of cleaning. One of the things that I noticed when I got one, whenever I cooked, and this was something that came up in the podcast, whenever I cook, there's these particles that get thrown into the air, and the Jasper goes from green, which the green mode is when it's kind of in, not neutral, but it's the air quality is decent. And then when it goes red, which is every single time that I cook, it goes red and the thing ramps up and picks up speed to really start filtering the air. And it's incredible just noticing when the air quality starts getting bad is almost, 90% of the time is after cooking. And that's what Mike said. And, a lot of people don't realize this, but the grease, the smoke, and the gas that comes off of your cooking materials, it can really be toxic to you. So I think that this is another no-brainer. The sleep quality aspect of this feels like something that everyone should be in tune with. Mike was saying that a lot of Jasper users use the Oura Ring, and they've seen scores on average go from 60 to 90. So 30-point increase, and that's out of 100. So you go from like 60% sleep quality to 90% sleep quality. That's anecdotal, but I think that, it's helpful to know, like, what are people actually seeing? He said that in tests, Jasper dropped airborne particle counts by 95% in under an hour. So not only is the air filter working, but it's highly effective. And I think this is one of my favorite lines from that podcast was Mike saying, this is like the laziest way to get healthy. And I think it's a perfect frame for kind of like what I'm talking about here in this article is like, how can we be as lazy as possible and get to a point where we're being as healthy as possible? And so I think that these air filters, the shower filters, is just such a great starting point. And just reducing that stress load is so imperative. I mean, most people, when they're talking about chronic stress, inflammation, or when they're talking about inflammation, a lot of times they're just talking about chronic stress. Like Brett struggled with ulcerative colitis for a long time. He was in college, living, lifestyle was not ideal. There were certain things that he was eating. He was predisposed to his stomach flaring up, stomach inflammation, or colon inflammation. And I think like a lot of things can help in that. But if you can kind of just set the baseline at a higher point by having some of these defenses in place, it can be a really powerful tool. So enough on that. Let's get to point 2 on things that you can do today to make yourself healthy forever. Thing number 2 is read at least one page out of a book each day. And it's another one. It's like, dude, I can't believe you're actually giving this advice. It sounds so dumb, so easy, so simple, but hear me out. So one of the pieces of data that I was pulling on here, it talked about the cognitive and stress benefits from reading. And so reading engages the imagination, can lower stress. And in a 2009 study from University of Sussex, just 6 minutes of reading led to a reduced stress of 68%. So that's more than listening to music or taking a walk. Reading regularly is linked to slower cognitive decline and a reduced risk of dementia. And participants who engaged in the mentally stimulating tasks like reading throughout life had a much lower rate of mental decline. I think in a world where we're so plugged in to our devices, being able to unplug and simply reset our imagination, reset our dopamine faculties by just plugging in and just reading is such a huge leg up, and something that I think if you're doing it on a daily basis, a little bit of reading is one of those things where maybe you start with just doing a simple page throughout the day, and then you compound to 10, 15, 20. And that reduced stress load that we're just talking about, 6 minutes equates to 68% reduction in stress. That's a massive decline. And I think for people who are juggling a lot of different things, it can seem like, oh man, this is just like one extra thing to add to my to-do list. But 6 minutes is nothing. I mean, that is literally the equivalent of, doing the dishes or, you're basically taking a shower. I mean, it's really not that much extra in your day. And so I think if there's one piece of encouragement here, it's that just a little bit can go very, very far. And that's another reason why I included this so high on this list is, if you can reduce your stress by 68%, get yourself in a better headspace, like how much better is the rest of your life? How much better is, all the things downstream of you deciding to be a little bit more aware, get a little bit more plugged into how you're actually feeling, getting into that mental state. So, I think that, keeping a book on your nightstand, just opening it up right before bed or right when you get up is a huge leg up to everyone, including myself, who, sometimes first thing in the morning or last thing at night, you're just grabbing for the phone. So I think a tip within this tip is, keep your phone outside of your bedroom and replace it with a book. Like, it's such a no-brainer. And I just want to add one thing to this too. During COVID, one of my goals was to simply read a page a day. And I think this post was inspired by this. And so I started reading Tim Ferriss's book, Tools of Titans. And through that, so basically like Tools of Titans, Tim Ferriss has interviewed some of the most amazing people on his podcast. And he diluted down each interview into a short chapter on each person that he's had on the show. And what I found interesting was usually the chapters were about 2 to 3 pages. And every single day I was focused on just reading one of those chapters. And it was so simple, but so satisfying in terms of I don't think I could quantify it as 68% reduction in stress, but it gave me that renewed feeling of fulfillment, going deeper. And, there's plenty of things that I gained just through that consistency of that practice. So I think reading a page of a book per day, there's so many mental benefits and spiritual benefits to that it makes so much sense. Number 3, invest in a water filter for drinking water. Now, this is very similar to the first tip, so I'm going to be quick here, but there's so many new studies coming out around how drinking water in most cities is really, really contaminated. I live in the city of Austin. There might not be a worse city in the U.S. than Austin for tap water. And so I think it's really important to go check out. There's a website and a resource. It's called the Environmental Working Group's Tap Water Database. Go Google that. I'll link to it. This is one of those things that I'm almost even concerned to link it, because I know people will go down this rabbit hole and realize like, wow, I did not think that my tap water was that contaminated, but it is. There's hundreds of chemicals, heavy metals, and radioactive substances in the U.S. drinking water, not to mention things that you don't necessarily want to be coming into contact with, like the level of hormones and birth control that's in the tap water. That's really, really potentially harmful for your health. And so, often at levels, these are at levels that scientists consider unsafe. And so in 2019, there was a peer-reviewed study that estimated that the mixture of contaminants could contribute to over 100,000 cancer cases nationwide. That's just from tap water. Then we move into the category and topic of forever chemicals, PFAs. And in 2023, there was a geological survey that studied and said that about 45% of U.S. tap water contains PFAS. So 45% of tap water contains these harmful forever chemicals. And I think for anyone who's paying attention at home, you can either choose two paths. You can freak out and let this be a stressor in your life where you're panicking about the water that you're drinking. Is it good? Is it bad? Or you can take the action of just getting a countertop water filter or getting a reverse osmosis for under your tap. That's one that I was in an apartment a little while back. They had the reverse osmosis, and you don't even have to think about it. It's a pretty big financial investment. So obviously this is coming from a place of, someone willing to make an investment into their health like this. But for something that you're consuming daily, like shower water or drinking water, it just makes so much sense to make this type of investment. I have been using I've used a few different brands. I like the Berkey, but some stuff has recently come out about that not being an effective water filter. So I don't have any new recommendations. I've been using the Berkey, guilty as charged. I've been using the water filter that people have been saying isn't as good as it claims to be. I found it to be successful, but I do think that there's better options out there. So I might have to do a follow-up on this one, part 2, on just a better water filter, or just do a review of like 10 of them and see if I can get some testing done to see what the contaminant levels are in each water filter. So let's put a pin in that. I'll do a part 2 of this where I review 10 water filters and see which one's the best. So stay tuned. I'll do like an actual research on that one, which will be good. Love that. All right. Number 4 on our list of things that you can do today that will improve your health forever. This one, again, is super boring. Go to bed before 10 o'clock. There's some crazy data out there that most adults need at least 7 hours of sleep. If you're getting less than 7 hours of sleep, you are increasing your risk of obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, coronary heart disease, stroke, and all-cause mortality. Sleep deprivation also impairs cognitive performance. So if you want to be good at your job, get enough sleep. So one thing that I found interesting was, this is a fascinating study out of the UK. So 88,000 adults found that falling asleep between 10 and 11 p.m. was associated with the lowest rates of cardiovascular disease. Compared with this window, the sleep onset after midnight increased cardiovascular risk by 25%, while sleeping before 10 p.m. increased risk by 24%, which I found interesting. So I guess it's speaking to the disruption in circadian rhythm where, for the most part, the sun is down for at least an hour by 10 o'clock or 2. And for most people, that's really the window when you should be feeling naturally tired from your hormones being aligned with needing to sleep. And so I think that 10 to 11 window is great. I prefer trying to get to bed by 9, wake up by 5 or 6. I find that to be successful for me. But there's a lot of things here baked into this that I think are really important. One is exposure to red and blue light. So if you're someone who's sitting inside all day under ultraviolet incandescent light bulbs, and you're somebody who's not getting enough steps, not going outside, not getting UV exposure, not getting a broad spectrum of all the different UV lights, red light specifically, and you're getting more blue light exposure because you're staying inside, I highly recommend just trying to at least get the first part of your circadian rhythm right, which is getting to bed and waking up at the right time, and then start to figure out, okay, I need to get outside more. I need to get more sun exposure. These things are basic tools. And 100, 200 years ago, you wouldn't have had to even say this. It's actually interesting. I think, before the light bulb was invented, people were getting an average of 10 to 11 hours of sleep, which seems like insane by today's standards, but 10 to 11 hours of sleep. And I think that naturally the light pollution in most cities causes people to sleep shorter, causes us to have a higher inclination, sleep less, be more exposed to stressors because we're sleep deprived. We don't have that renewed energy. We don't have that restfulness. And so there's a lot of things that I think are underpinning people's health that can be tied back to how much sleep are you getting. And circadian rhythm, again, like it really does start and end with our exposure to time as it relates to light. And so if we're getting up early and getting sunlight on our skin and in our eyes early in the morning, that sets off a cascade effect of how our hormones are interacting and unlocking throughout the day. And so if you get that initial sunlight, that means that your body is going to start unraveling this cascade of hormones throughout the day so that you're timed up to be tired again late at night. Now, one thing that you can do is get some blue light blocking glasses that can help you with some wind down time if you're someone who struggles to get to bed relatively early. Another thing too is just getting off your phone. Highly recommend cutting off caffeine before noon. These are, again, this is nothing groundbreaking, but these are things that will have a dramatic shift in your health over time. And if you're someone who's sitting here going, I'm just looking to lose weight, I'm looking to look better, I think this playbook that I'm laying out here is kind of a feel better playbook before you start to worry about the aesthetic. And I think it's important because once you start feeling better, you're just naturally inclined to have more energy. You want to go get that workout in. You want to go do hard things. You want to go push yourself more. So this is that feel better playbook. And very simply, I think that is the way to go. We're out here trying to live longer, live better lives. Vanity works for some people, but I think it's also, a short-term fix for a lot of people's health concerns, and a lot of people who look great on the inside, they're struggling. And so, and I mean that from a biological standpoint, not a spiritual standpoint, but maybe from a spiritual standpoint too. So, I think that doing some of these fixes that are more geared towards how you feel is really important. And so that leads me to number 5, which is meditate for 3 minutes every day. I think meditation, particularly on things that, like for me, the word meditation has evolved over time. 3 years ago, I was someone who was more of a meditator from the school of like Stoicism, philosophy-based meditation. And now I would say meditation for me is like meditating on the Word of God, reading Scripture, and sitting there and just thinking, ruminating on, what are the spiritual nutrients that I need to be meditating on, thinking on, to see change and transformation happen in my life. And I think it's a powerful tool to listen to God, listen to the immutable Word of God that has transcended generation after generation. This is, from my standpoint, the objective truth, and this truth can speak into our lives as we ruminate on it more, as we understand it more, as we grow in our spiritual walks. And so I think, these seeds can get planted through seeds of growth can get planted through meditating on different pieces of Scripture. And I think that there's a powerful practice here. So when I wrote this article back in 2022, that's not what I was intending to steer people towards. I was steering people just towards the art of meditation, quieting your mind, simplifying your thoughts, being aware of your thoughts. I think that's a beautiful practice. That is part of what I'm talking about now. Now, the other part of that, the first part of that meditative practice is kind of being aware, identifying your thoughts, almost coming to neutral and draining some of those negative thoughts. And the second part of the meditation is actually filling your mind up. So the first part, draining down, coming down, auditing, coming to an awareness of how you're feeling, how you're thinking, how you're showing up in the world. And then the second part of that is being reinforced with positive thinking through the spiritual truth of Scripture. And so I think there's a powerful form of meditation here that we could go much, much deeper on, but I'll just leave you guys with this. There's over 200 studies on meditation that have found mindfulness-based therapy effective in reducing stress and different psychological distresses. So I found meditation to be a hugely beneficial for me, even before I was, thinking about it through the lens of like, what does this mean for my spiritual practices from a Christian believer standpoint? Meditation was something that kind of gave me peace of mind, gave me a spiritual rhythm to come back to. I think that's great. And if you're early on, or somebody who is listening to this and going, man, I'm not totally there yet, just still meditate. I think that there's still a lot of power in, understanding kind of how the mind is being exposed to the world and how your mind is interacting with, different thoughts, different interpretations of things that are happening around you. It can be very, very, very powerful. Just got a notification here. All right. Number 6, keep a simple food journal. Now, I'm not going to expand too much into this. We've actually done a full podcast, Brett and I, on keeping a food journal. If you're somebody who's struggling with, putting on muscle, losing weight, you want to pay more attention to what's happening with your body from a physiological standpoint. Like, hey, I'm sensitive to these foods, or like, I don't understand if I'm sensitive to these foods or not. I feel like I wake up and have low energy and brain fog every single day. I don't know what's happening. A food journal will help you figure out some of the sequences and some of the rhythms of what you're eating, when you're eating it, and how it's affecting you from an energy standpoint. And I think one of the things that I've learned through food journaling, it doesn't take a lot of time to implement the skill and practice, and you'll eventually log up 2, 3, 4 weeks of data that speak to what's actually happening with your health. I would pair getting a simple food journal with getting blood work. There's plenty of great companies out there. Literally today, got my blood drawn from a company called Superpower. Love them. So a food journal can go great with something like blood work, because let's say you get your blood drawn every 6 months. You keep a food journal in between that time period. You start to develop an understanding of what your habits actually are. You're the type of person who's eating foods that might have some level of a microinflammatory marker to them, to your genetics. So you're eating nightshades. They're causing you to have some low level of inflammation. You didn't realize that before. You're able to identify that simply through a food journal. That's one instance of a food journal working for you. Another is maybe you aren't timing your meals properly. You're somebody who's eating late at night, or not eating enough protein, or not, getting enough calories. Like for most women, we had, I think it was maybe Jake Thomas on the podcast. He was talking about how most women aren't eating nearly enough calories and how it's negatively affecting their health. And I'm like, man, that is like so fascinating, because I think like for the most part, people don't really realize how undereating can have the same negative impact that overeating can have. And it's more of the hidden, biomarkers, your hormone levels and things like that are being affected as opposed to overeating, which also affects your hormone levels. But, it's a little bit more noticeable if you're healthy or unhealthy if you're overeating. So, all that to say, a food journal is one of these things. It feels a little monotonous. It feels like maybe something that's a little bit type A, a little bit too much of a chore, but I can't recommend it enough if you're somebody who's looking to just really dial it in and really start to see like, all right, my health isn't where I want it to be. I need to make these changes in the next 6 months. I want to make these changes in the next 6 months. I'm going to commit in a big way to making a change. I'm going to get my blood drawn. I'm going to keep a food journal for 6 months, and then I'm going to get my blood drawn again. And I'm going to have all this data to then go back to the drawing board and say, this is how I've been approaching my health. What do I need to change? How have these changes actually impacted my health? You'll see that in the blood work. And from there, you just get really good live data to just constantly tweak, constantly incorporate back into your health protocols. And then from there, a simple food journal is just something that's a tool in your tool belt, and you don't need to just keep doing it. So highly recommend that if you're somebody who's just getting started, or somebody who's struggling with some food sensitivities, things of that nature. Number 7, this is one that I think is imperative for most people to pay attention to, because I think it ties together a lot around meditation, lowering stress, being active, and overall just like increasing your activity level, getting sunlight exposure. So in improving your circadian rhythm, improving digestion. These are all things that happen when you increase the amount of steps that you're getting per day. So I think that if you can shoot for 10 to 15,000 steps per day, this is again, insanely basic, insanely generic advice, but I just want to reinforce it. I've probably given it this piece of advice 1,000 times on the podcast, but this is just the practical framework for things that you can do today to improve your health forever. Get those extra steps in, and you'll see a marked increase in your overall mood, decrease in the amount of stress that you're feeling, or the perceived stress that you're feeling. I think you'll see that your overall thoughts are improved. You'll have better exposure to the sunlight, which will improve your vitamin D levels, which will improve your hormone levels. There's so many things that I could tie back to a positive health outcome from just getting more steps outside. And so this is a no-brainer for me in terms of including it on this list. And I don't want to spend too much more time other than saying that this is such a simple way to improve your lifespan. Like from a mortality reduction standpoint, I don't know if there's a better thing to do than applying getting more steps. A Harvard Chan School study analyzed in 2019, it analyzed 17,000 older women, found that taking 3,000 steps per day had a lower risk of premature death than those taking 2,000 steps. Benefits increased with more steps, but leveled off around 7,500 steps. Participants walking 7,500 steps had the same mortality risk as those walking 10,000. Okay, so what's being said there is if you're getting a basic level of movement and steps throughout the day, 3,000 steps is like a mile and a half. That's really not that much. But if you're going out there, getting the steps in, getting 2, 3, 4, 5 miles per day, that will have such a compounding effect over time. So highly encourage that. I think it's incredibly practical. It's simple, and it's something you just have to make time for. And you can habit stack. You can listen to a book, you can listen to a podcast, listen to this podcast. There's so many things that you can do. Have phone calls with people. Just go outside, get a few extra steps per day. You will not regret it. Number 8 is just the very simple fact of just including strength training. Most people, they'll do their cardio machines, they'll maybe walk, they'll do a yoga class, and they'll forget that strength training is really one of these things that if you can add or maintain your muscle mass through your 30s, 40s, and 50s, you're lowering your all-cause mortality by 10, 20%. Here there's a longevity study that I was looking at. 16 studies found that people who performed muscle strengthening exercise had a 15% lower risk of mortality than those who did not. So just doing 30 to 60 minutes of strength training weekly can lead to a 10 to 20% reduction in your all-cause mortality. Now, what does that strength training need to look like? I think it doesn't need to look like anything crazy. You can do a bunch of bodyweight squats, push-ups, pull-ups. I love dips, Bulgarian split squats, deadlifts, lunges. I like hitting the ski erg, the assault bike. These things are, you do 5-10 minutes of them in a circuit for 20-30 minutes. You're good. You're getting a good sweat. You're probably burning 400, 500 calories in a 30-minute session. And then the strength training component, I think, trying to work on some isometrics, trying to work on some just very simple compound movements where you're doing progressive overload training. You're working at increasing by 2.5 to 5% each time you get in the gym. So you do some bench press, some squats, some overhead press, some deadlifts. You work on just simply trying to increase by 2% each time. You're going to see a massive increase in your mood, your longevity. The data is there. There's 16 studies saying that you're going to live 10 to 20%, or that you're going to lower your risk 10 to 20% of all-cause mortality. It's very powerful. And what really it speaks to is strength training. When you're strength training, you are taxing your nervous system. You're also increasing your bone density. What most people don't realize is, when you're lifting, you're creating micro stresses throughout the body, and it's causing a lot of cellular reproduction, cellular repair. A lot of that is originating in your bones. And so when you get to 50, 60, 70 years old, and you've been strength training for a while, your bones are more resilient. They're used to turning over and repairing cells. They're used to creating these cells that create longevity. And so I think one of the sneaky benefits is just, your body gets used to building and repairing itself as you build muscle, you build strength in the gym. Very simple. Again, this is nothing groundbreaking, but it's something that I included in this article because it's something you can do today that will improve your health forever. And 30 to 60 minutes really isn't that much. So go out there, get it done. If you need any recommendations for workouts, I'm happy to. I'll actually go about and do that. I'll put together a simple, week-long workout plan in the links in the bio, so you guys can check those out. All right, we've got 2 more here. Number 9 is limiting ultra-processed foods and choosing real foods. Health risks of ultra-processed foods. In Harvard's 30-year cohort study of 114,000 adults, participants who consumed the most ultra-processed foods had a 4% higher risk of all-cause mortality and an 8% higher risk of death from neurodegenerative diseases. I think that one of the things that we haven't really fully come to grips with, I think we're starting to with recent administrative changes in the government, with people like RFK Jr., Callie Means, some people that we've had on the podcast, like Marty McCary. People are actually implementing some of these changes, like getting rid of food dyes. This is incredible progress. Getting rid of high fructose corn syrup. I think this is a massive leg up. You see this renaissance of brands and restaurants starting to cook with actually healthy oils. They're getting rid of seed oils. And we're starting to see processed foods actually start to become incrementally healthier, which is great, because processed foods right now are incredibly toxic and poisonous. And I say that knowing that, a lot of people are consuming these things because they're cheaper and more affordable, and they can't really afford to necessarily eat a whole foods diet 7 days a week. And so, I think it's just important to be aware, when you do have the options to make those choices, if you can, eliminating the stuff that's causing negative health effects is always the right way to go. So nothing groundbreaking here. I think one of the things, again, a 15% increase in all-cause mortality from ultra-processed foods just feels like something that should wake you up. It should be alarming. If you're thinking about having kids, thinking about having a family, you have a family. These are stats that should cause some level of habit change, habit formation. Even if it's getting rid of one processed food meal per week and replacing it with a whole food meal, that is a step in the right direction. So if you're sitting here going, man, I eat out all the time. I eat from the gas station all the time. I'm getting a bunch of ultra processed foods. Don't panic. You can make changes and your body responds quickly. These bodies that we have are very adapted. They're very responsive. If you give them the right level of stress, healthy stress, they will respond positively. And I think that if you focus on removing some of these toxins that we've talked about, like, in the water, in your clothes, the air toxins through a water or through an air filter, that's helping. But ultimately, food and what you eat on a daily basis is really going to make a massive difference, particularly in terms of like energy levels. Like, I think one of the biggest shifts for me was just realizing how much energy was being taxed out of my system by eating processed foods. And then I went on animal-based keto diet and realized, whoa, like I didn't need coffee anymore. I was getting more sunlight. I wanted to work out more. There was just all these cascading effects. And so much of it was just linked to the quality of the food that I was eating. So even from a dollar for dollar standpoint, if it's more expensive to eat whole foods, I do think that there's a positive return on those dollars for eating whole foods, like more energy. Like, what does that equate to? It could equate to a lot of things, but if you're someone who's out in the working world and needing creative ideas, needing creative inspiration, needing to push long, hard hours, I would bet that eating whole foods is going to have a longer, more sustainable impact for you from a health standpoint. Closing thought here. So this is the last point. Number 10, spend time outdoors in natural light. I'd already talked about this, but just getting outside, getting that circadian rhythm dialed in, 10 to 30 minutes of sun exposure each day at the bare minimum. I mean, if you're working a corporate job and you're staying inside all day while the sun is up, just try to go outside for lunch. 10, 30-minute walk. That's all you need. I mean, preferably you're going way longer, but if you're having to do this dance of being in a city or being in a place where you know that the environment isn't perfect, try to just set your lifestyle up so that you can make these changes and you can start to incorporate some natural rhythms to your life that make you feel really, really good. And so getting outside, getting on a walk, getting natural light exposure, these are all things that are going to benefit lowering stress. They're going to help your ability to manage different areas of your life. They're going to help you sleep better. They're going to help you digest maybe some of the less healthy food choices that you make. Like it's going to help suppress your appetite, so you're not constantly hungry. It's like there's this kind of like delicate dance that's going on here between these 10 recommendations that I've made. They're all playing into lowering your state of stress, lowering your state of inflammation, making you more aware about the food that you're putting into your body. And as a result, you are feeling healthier. You're feeling the compounded momentum of being a healthier person and what that can do in your life. So that is it for today, folks. Thank you again for listening to another episode of the Meat Mafia podcast. We appreciate you guys listening and staying true to the Meat Mafia. I'm going to link this article here that I wrote. It's going to have some links in it, and it's going to have some studies, some links to products that I like, products that I use. So if you're someone who's sitting here going, man, I really just want to buy one of these things and see if they work, see if it actually has an effect, go check out that article. I'd also say too, just from the standpoint of setting expectations, a lot of these things, it's going to be pretty tough to measure the change. It's not like, hey, I put 50 pounds on my squat and now I can jump higher. So give it some time, make one or all of these changes and just see like the momentum stack. And if there's anything else that I could say, it's just, commit to this way of life and know that even if it's difficult to measure some of the success that you might be having from, getting a shower filter, getting a water filter, getting an air filter, getting to sleep sooner, like all of these things are going to have a positive effect. It's just a matter of how much of an effect they're having. And I would bet for most people that there will be a noticeable difference, especially when it comes to, circling back to the first point. It's like your shower filter, what I noticed is, a lot of skin issues that I was having, dry skin, itchy skin, it was linked to having no filter on that chlorinated water that was coming onto my skin. And lo and behold, as soon as I get a shower filter, my scalp is not itchy anymore. My skin feels like it's less dry. So there's lots of benefits, I think, to considering some of these changes. And I hope you guys go about making some of them. And if you do, please reach out. I'd love to hear it. But for now, that is it. Thank you guys for listening, and tune back in next week for another episode of the Meat Mafia podcast. If you haven't already, go leave a review for us on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple, wherever you stream the Meat Mafia. And thank you so much. We appreciate you guys for listening. I'll see you next week.